Welcome to Reality TV. I'm Ray Bakari. Joining me today is Rhode Island GOP Chair Joe Powers. We're going to have Joe Powers on here to talk about the 2024 election results. We're currently taping this on Thursday afternoon. The results came in Tuesday night. Former President Donald Trump, now president-elect, won the presidential election, electoral college, and popular vote. Senate has flipped from blue to red, and it looks like the House might stay slightly red too, based on current results. That could change depending on some of the key races that votes are still being tabulated on. But good night overall for the Republicans. So starting off, Joe, you're the state GOP chair. How did it feel?
Well, first off, thanks for having me, Ray. I really appreciate, I always enjoy talking with you. It feels great. It's not even on the national side that I feel really good about. I feel really good about what happened in Rhode Island. That's my bread and butter. That's where I really put my primary focus. We did well, comparatively speaking, to other years. Should we have done better? Yeah, I feel we should have. But the numbers show that the Rhode Islanders are making a shift towards the Republican way of doing things. There's been more voter turnout on the Republican side. There was a lot more Republicans voting early, and I'm talking hard Republicans, people who are, people who vote in pretty much every election. So they're trusting the system a little bit more, which is good. They're getting out and getting the opportunity to vote. We picked up a couple of seats in the House, which is amazing. We did drop one. We have it in challenge right now as far as the Senate is concerned. But I feel great overall on the trend. Mind you, we can't fix this overnight. I've got a really good set of tools. However, they don't have any pixie dust in them, and I can't just sprinkle the dust and make things happen. But the trend is what we're really paying attention to, and we're only getting started.
And if I didn't say it in the intro, it's great to have you on. I think the last time we spoke in an interview setting was before you were party chair in 2023. So it's been quite some time, and you've done quite a bit in terms of since then. Making the push for the IG's office. Obviously, this election, you had a special election under your belt so far. And speaking of those results here locally, Trump ran up his margins in a state that typically goes blue by a lot. I mean, although Harris did win Rhode Island's 4 electoral votes by double digits, Trump improved in every Rhode Island community, all 39 cities and towns, flipping back some of the communities that went to him in 16, then flipped to Biden in 20. He even won Woonsocket, which is a city. Typically, Republicans don't win cities on the presidential level here, though, and even southeastern Mass, another part of like our region's coverage. He did well in Fall River, but sticking with Rhode Island, Republicans typically don't crack 40%. He's at like 41.9. Last time that happened was H.W. Bush. Did this showing surprise you in any way?
It actually didn't surprise me in any way, shape, or form. You got to remember, Ray, I'm the guy that gets the phone calls. I get the emails, I get the text messages from people. And it's not necessarily just the Republicans who are, complaining about this or complaining about that. There was a lot more independent, unaffiliated voters who were reaching out, asking, how can we help? We had north of 300 people volunteer for poll watchers this year. We made a very concerted effort. We put somebody in charge to actually run the entire thing where we did trainings every single night for about 3 weeks prior to. We weren't expecting anything to go south, but the idea was to get more people involved who wanted to get involved. And those were a lot of the independents. Like you mentioned, Woonsocket flipping over. And it wasn't by much, but in my world, a win's a win. We'll take the W where we can, whether you win by 1 or win by 100. It's definitely something that's going to move, which is exactly what I meant in my first comments, which was the trend is showing that people are showing that they're trying to have a little bit more of a balance here in Rhode Island. Although we still have an opportunity to do a lot more work, and that's what we're focusing on now.
And regard to Woonsocket, I should know also, I meant to preface this, Biden, I believe, had won that by 7 points. It was like 52-45 margin when I was doing like the comparing and contrasting from 20 to now. This also shows, though, your party can attract new voters in Rhode Island. As I mentioned in the lead up to the other question, typically the ceiling for Republicans is between like 36 to 38 on a good night statewide. Trump cracking nearly 42. So how does your party plan to capitalize on the momentum and get some folks into your tent?
Yeah, so we're going to use that as food for fodder, if you would. I mean, we're going to take those numbers that we have, and I'll use down ballot, not even just necessarily President Trump. We had Stephen Corvey, who at one point was before the mail-in ballots came in. He was at 45%. We had Patricia Morgan, who was at 47%. Before the mail-in ballots. Now, they both, after the mail-in ballots, obviously the numbers have gone down, but they're still both in the 40 percentile, which is huge. And there's an old joke in Rhode Island that I learned a couple of years ago that says, if you're a Republican, if you put your name on the dotted line that you're running, you're going to get 31%. Your 32% is going to be given to you. The extra points that they got, the extra votes that they got was from hard work. And I think it was also a combination of the economy and things that were going. How are we going to build on that? We're going to use that as information to show people, see, there are more people like you that want to make a change. We hear the phone calls all the time, which always surprises a lot of Republicans, that we get the phone calls of people saying that they want change, they need change. We got to get things going here. For 80 years, it's been under one party rule, and we're getting what we've got so far because of that. And now people are showing up to actually want to do it, and we're making small incremental changes on things, which is okay, I guess. I would love to be able to say we could, like I said earlier, drop some pixie dust on this and make it all just change, but we can't do that. But anything worth building is going to be done methodically, and I think that's what we need to focus on right now.
Now, although Trump did do well in this state, improving by approximately 4 points from the 2020 and 2016 performance, it didn't fully trickle down. I know you mentioned some congressional candidates did better than they typically did, but AMO, Magazine, and the White House all one-handedly, and we're going to talk about General Assembly after that. But just initially on the congressional candidates, any thoughts on why it didn't trickle down as much?
Well, I've heard so many different theories. And of course, Monday morning quarterbacking with folks is a big thing in Rhode Island. They'll tell you what we should have, what we could have, what we would have done, blah, blah, blah. And I've heard everything from, the unions turned and said, hey, listen, you got to vote for Trump. He's going to help us on the labor side, blah, blah, blah. But everything else in Rhode Island, you got to do democratically. And then I've heard other people say, well, people went in, they just wanted Trump. They don't have faith in the Republicans in Rhode Island. Or they say, you know what? I've heard the whole, battered wife syndrome, believe it or not, what people say Rhode Islanders are just used to the beatings that they've been getting and they don't want to change to another flavor. I don't know if I subscribe to any of that. What I will say is that most people are seeing the idea that we're going to be bringing bigger people to the stage to actually start doing things a little bit differently in the state of Rhode Island. Our job as a party is to make sure that we highlight the candidates and then highlight all of the lowlights that are going on in Rhode Island and show people what we have the potential of doing here in the state that's going to make it better for Rhode Islanders. Right? You and I both know you're in media. You've been doing this for a while now, even when you were back in school and such, and you've seen the list where you show Rhode Island at the bottom of the list and pretty much everything, including, faith in government, which is pretty sad. And I think it's now time for Rhode Islanders to finally break out of that. But I can't make them do it. They have to want to do it. And they have to step up and they have to come to the polls and they have to vote in the right direction to make sure that we put Rhode Island back on course.
How did the mail ballot operation look this time around? I know it's a non-COVID election. The COVID's not as much of a threat, but was there any concerted effort to try to get some of those mail ballots maybe going to the retirement homes like the Democrats typically do?
Yeah, I mean, there's always an opportunity, and I want to make sure I clear up a couple of things. When it comes to like the retirement homes and things of that sort, nursing homes and such, that's a paid gig that's done by the state, and it's supposed to be done on a balanced effort. So you have Republicans, you have Democrats. You can't just say everyone goes in. Call it nonpartisan, call it what you want. However, the idea behind that is to get volunteers or people to step up and actually take those jobs, which we made a very concerted effort to do so. As far as the mail-in ballots are concerned, ballot harvesting of that sort, there's so many Rhode Islanders still who are on that ledge of like they hate the idea, they don't like the idea of ballot harvesting. Whether you like it or don't, it's like taxes. You got to do it. It's just something you got to utilize. I like to coin the terminology of policy jujitsu. This is the policy they came up with. Let's use it against them. It's just the idea, though, of getting the volunteers. And we can't do it by ourselves. I mean, we're an all-volunteer organization. We work our tail off nonstop. My wife will tell you I'm 60 to 70 hours a week in that office and doing politic things as compared to whatever else that I should be doing, like a honeydew list. But once we get more volunteers and people start getting on board, and I really think this punch in the arm of both Stephen Corvey and Patricia Morgan doing so well as they did, plus picking up GA seats, plus Donald Trump stepping in, I think we're going to have a lot more people coming out of the woodwork that want to start participating. And I'm all for it. Bring it on.
Now shifting to General Assembly, I do have to armchair quarterback a little bit as someone who's been following a lot of these races, all the districts that I was marking as competitive, like this one was decided by this margin in 22, so maybe this person runs again, or this seat typically goes close in the presidential year. So I just have to armchair quarterback a little bit, and I'm specifically talking about for the House side first, and then we'll go to Senate. So House 26. We knew for a while Patricia Morgan was going to run for U.S. Senate. She filed with the FEC months and months ago, but you guys didn't have a candidate until the filing deadline. What went into the process of recruiting someone in that area? Because the Democrat won by quite a bit.
Yeah, so we'd like to say it's a party effort. It's more of let's try to find out who it is that we want. We had somebody who was actually going to be stepping into the role. Patricia Morgan spearheaded that search to find somebody. She did have somebody that she felt really, really good about. Unfortunately, that person couldn't do it for whatever particular reasons. Mr. Fisher, who stepped into that role, stepped into at the last minute, and he ran one heck of a race. And he did what he could to actually get himself going. The thing is this is from a party perspective. I'll put this on us because we need to be the ones that takes ownership for everything.
Mhm.
Is we need to be more aggressive when it comes to the trainings with people and making sure we are the ones that are showing people what needs to get done as far as their campaigns are concerned, helping them file their paperwork, helping them with their funding and their campaigning and their, getting them trained up and things like that. I did make a very concerted effort last year to put together even basic information stuff like training manuals and things of that sort. I've got them all ready to rock and roll for people who are coming in. However, as far as Republicans are concerned, I'm a big guy and I got a pretty big wingspan, but it's not as big as I need it to be for Rhode Island to grab everybody and kind of pull everybody into the fold. But I'm working on it. And I got a lot of people out there who are starting to come together, and we're really taking a focused measure on it by setting up a comms department and setting up a media department and then setting up social media trainings and things of that sort to get people more. I'll tell you, and I told everybody who ran the last time, other than my appreciation, the only other thing I could say to them is your 26 campaign starts at 8:01 on Tuesday night. And that's what they need to do. We can't have any last minute Charlies anymore stepping in, expecting something to happen, because they will fall into that, oh, you got your 30% because you're a Republican. We need them at the 51, 52, and 53%.
Right. And I think about, was there maybe like a town councilor in any of those towns? I know West Warwick, is a little bit more conservative, and Coventry's part of Coventry's in that district. So I'm assuming House 26 on the radar for 2026.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then
So the best that we can do though, Ray, is to ask. We can't force anybody to run because we want to make sure that people are running for the right reasons. And we
right.
want to make sure that their heart's in it.
And then I have to talk about House 39 because this was the closest one last time. Just former then Rep. Justin Price, Republican, lost, I believe it was 32 votes. It was the closest General Assembly race. He ran again, but he lost by a bigger margin. And this district has areas that Trump won. What happened here?
Well, I'll tell you what, as far as running the campaign, getting back into the fold, I can't speak for Justin when it comes to running his campaign and how he did it. Understanding, of course, each campaign is run as its own independent entity. It's all we are there for is to recruit, is to train, and to promote each of the candidates and do whatever it is that we can help out. Obviously, there are different potholes that need to be filled, and that's true with anybody's campaign. It's not necessarily any one particular person. Is there one particular thing that could affect somebody winning or losing a campaign? The answer to that is simply no. Because if it was, somebody would try to figure it out, bottle it, and then sell it and be a billionaire. And if that were the case, then we could potentially do it. Other than raising as much money as possible to, buy as much exposure as possible. As far as his particular campaign, right now we're still in the process of taking a look at, the wins and the losses and analyzing the information, and we'll take it from there.
Was there anybody else on the Republican side interested? Because somebody who hears that name will think, okay, this is the former rep who said that he was in DC during January 6th, which in Rhode Island, that's radioactive. And then he blamed the riots on Antifa in a since deleted tweet and from a since deleted account. Was there any other Republicans interested in running that seat? I just got to tell me about the process for getting somebody for that seat.
Well, as far as that seat was concerned, is he stepped up to want to run, and he said he had a new outlook on what it is he wanted to do and what he wanted to accomplish. He impressed me with this conversation. He was actually one of our delegates that came out to Milwaukee. He really entrenched himself in the party. He came out, and we had a great time out in Milwaukee. He was involved with a bunch of the meetings, with all of the assemblies and things of that sort. And he had a really newfound outlook on what it was he wanted to do. He impressed me, with what he wanted to do. And, it doesn't always work out perfectly. And again, we're not all perfect, and we're going to try and try again. I like to kind of turn that into a test and measure campaign. We're going to see what works, and then move on from there, and then fix what didn't, and we'll go from there.
I got one more, and then we'll talk about some of your wins. I promise this isn't just going to all be Monday morning
I'm
quarterbacking.
good.
But we
I'm good.
have to, though, especially when you look at these seats. This one is a case where you had an incumbent who, as of right now, is narrowly losing. Senate District 29, located in Warwick. Senator Anthony DeLuca II is narrowly down against Democrat Peter Apollonio Jr. Senator DeLuca won by a healthier margin in 2022. Any takeaways from this result this time?
Yeah, again, it's each campaign is going to be run independently of itself, and door knocking and things and volunteers and trying to get this is where the more of the public and the more we can get Rhode Islanders, especially Rhode Island unaffiliated people, who, quite frankly, I firmly still believe the majority of them are Republican, who want to step up and want to volunteer to get out. You got to remember too, the majority of these people that are running aren't elites. They're not people that are sitting on multi-millions of dollars. They're working class people, which is exactly what the Republican Party is. They're out working 9 to 5, and by the time they get home, do what they need to do at home, and they're right back out and they're knocking on doors. His race right there is there's a lot of other things that go involved with this. There's some pretty big names that are in that area on the rep side, on the House side that actually can help contribute. And let's not forget, they got some pretty big names in the Democrat Party that are nationally known. I mean, you got your White Houses, you got your Reeds, who actually came on and did the campaigning as well. And I'm not faulting anybody for it, because trust me, if we had them, I'd be using them as well. Use every tool that we have, every arrow in our quiver, we're going to try to do. Where he came up short, I don't know. Again, that's going to be in an analysis stage to see where it is. And again, we still have a shot at it because he's within the margin of error, where he's actually we're going to be taking a look at the numbers and recounting everything just to make sure that everything's on the up and up, and we can move forward from there.
I should know he has also, yeah, confirmed with various media outlets that he's going to request a recount. I believe he has until November 12th. I think it's like 4 or 5 p.m.
Yep.
So it's like 1 week after the election. Now looking at some wins, because there were a couple of flips. House 21, Marie Hopkins, she came back after losing by 38 votes. I want to say it was to Camille Vella Wilkinson. Vella Wilkinson didn't run again. She beat a sitting councilman from Warwick. Then in House 15, you held on to that. Chris Paplauskis, term limited councilman, hold on to that seat that was open. And then House 42, Richard Fascia flipped it. It had no incumbent because his opponent, Democrat Kelsey Coletta, unseated the incumbent Ed Cardillo in the primary. Republican Paul Santucci also held on to House 53 by double digits, bigger than the Brian Ray win from 2022.
Yeah.
Just all those bunched together. How do you feel about those pickups slash holds?
I mean, I'm going to assume you can answer that question yourself, but I will tell you that as excited and as happy as we were with those results, the euphoria from them winning those seats ends at 12:01, because now we're right back to work again. I commend each and every candidate in the entire state of Rhode Island that ran. They put their lives on hold, their families on hold, their jobs on hold to get the job done. And I know that every single one of them worked their tail off. It's not to say that one worked harder than the other. They just did things a little bit differently here or there to get different results. They were a very well-earned race. Paul Santucci did an amazing job. I think I saw a post just recently where it took him over 3.5 hours, or a 3-hour tour. He made a joke about going to pick up his yard signs with how many signs that he put out. I know that Richard Fascia did an unbelievable job. He's literally down the street from me in Johnston. I'm right on the line over here, so I've seen his signs nonstop. I had him on my front lawn, as a matter of fact. And he worked his tail off, and he put in a ton of work. And Sandra Taylor, who is the chairman for the Johnston Republican Committee, did an amazing job with all three of her candidates, all four of her candidates out there: Peter Trementozzi, and then you got Karen Gorman, you had Nick Grosso, and you had Richard Fascia, and she worked overtime to help these guys. And then you got Marie Hopkins, who is a force in and of herself, is the best way to say it. She is somebody who is a go-getter. She's not going to give up. She works, she walks, she works, she walks, and she put in the time that she needed to. I firmly believe even if her former opponent was running, I still think she would have taken her down, because Marie put in the time. She put in the work, she put in the time, and she did everything that she needed to do to make it happen. And then Chris Paplauskis, I can't say enough about this guy. I don't think I've ever had an ill thought or kind of tweak in the eye of saying, what's he talking about? This guy put in his work. He put in his time as well. He kept that seat for us over in Western Cranston, again, down the road from me. He did an amazing job, and he put in the work, and very middle of the road kind of guy. He's gonna contribute a ton when it comes to the House. And I know that the leader Chippendale is ecstatic over everyone. I know he's already had a meeting with sitting with all of them to talk to them about it, just to get them prepared, which I think is phenomenal, getting them squared up and ready to rock and roll. So we're elated right now. But again, work's not done. Now we're working on 26 as of right now.
And right before we started recording this interview, Leadership and Dale and House Minority Whip David Place both got reelected to their posts and now a 10-member caucus. In your backyard of Cranston, Mayor Ken Hopkins held on. This was a brutal campaign. He had a tough primary opponent, and same with the general election. Neither of them held back any punches when their criticisms about the mayor. But Mayor Hopkins showed he successfully fended off that primary and that general election. Republicans in Cranston also picked up a council seat, a citywide seat. It's still split government. Thoughts on that dynamic?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's everyone's gonna reach for whatever it is they think they can grab onto. And I commend everyone for putting in the time to do what it is that they want to do. I think Ken Hopkins ran an amazing race. I know that Barbara Ann Fenton Fung put in a ton of time. She put in a lot of money into her campaign. She was doing what she thought was going to be right for Cranston, and I commend her for doing that. I'm never going to attack anybody for anything in particular. I don't think that this was an ego-driven thing. I don't think it was a power grab. I think it was somebody who thought that it was their time to step up. And this is why we have elections, though, Ray, right? So people step up, and they're the ones that say whether or not that they want somebody to do what they do. But I'll tell you what, it was a baptism by fire for me. I mean, my own backyard, and then a primary on my only Republican mayor in the state, and I had to kind of dance that line. I live in Cranston, born and raised. I'm still here. The good part was this: either one of them that won, we had good options as far as mayor was going to be in Cranston. Do I think we should have come to that point? I genuinely don't think we should have. I think that we had it in a spot where the maintain of power that we have as far as the mayor, because Mayor Hopkins has done a phenomenal job. I've gotten to know him very well over the last year and a half, and I'm the guy who sat back, armchair quarterbacking, sit back and I watch what happens, and I'm a numbers guy, and I see what he's done, and I see the numbers that he has right now with the budget and the surplus and the rainy day fund, and he's done an amazing job, and I'm looking forward to see what he can pull out for the next 4 years.
Now let's talk about 2026. As you mentioned a couple times, 8:01 on Tuesday is when the 2026. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, because during 2022, it took a little bit for the party. You weren't there yet in the leadership role, but you were a candidate yourself. So
Yeah.
but it took a bit for folks to know who the Republican candidate for governor was. And I have to be blunt. At one point, it was like, oh, it's going to be David Darlington. Doesn't drops out. Oh, maybe it's going to be the House Minority Leader. Doesn't run. Then we finally know around like January, February that it's Ashley Kalis, and then she runs her race.
Mm.
When can we expect there to be a Republican governor candidate this time for 26?
The search has already started. The search actually started even prior to this election season. Now, I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman, and I want to make sure that I have all of my foundations built in. So the idea of looking for, and it's not to say people prior to me didn't do this. They did do it. The thing is we can only ask. And then the people that we ask, do you vet prior to asking, or do you vet after they say yes? And then you kind of go through and see what their availability is. You see what their skeletons are. Like for me, when I ran for chair, because I love this line, and this was given to me by former national committee man Steve Frias, isn't any vetting opportunity. First questions are always, have you ever been arrested, and have you ever been convicted? To which my answer was, never been convicted. But my point being is, we want to make sure the people that we're bringing in are ready to rock and roll. The search is already started. We've already had some conversations with people. No, I am not going to give out anybody's name because I'm not.
Oh, come on, Joe. There's
Ray,
not one name.
that's going to be one of those follow-ups. Anybody you want to share with us? The answer is no,
Well,
Ray. We're going
okay,
to say that
but
right
all
now.
right. Well, I will ask one who's publicly said then. Ashley Kalis has tweeted out after the press conference related to the investigation by the state the ILO contract. It sounds like she's not taking the idea of running in 2026 off the table, like that's
Mm,
on the table. Have you
mm.
spoken to her about it?
Have I spoken to her about it? We've spoken about the ILO contract. We've
No,
talked
the
about different
2026.
things.
The
Oh, the
2026.
2026. So you didn't clarify there, right?
My apologies.
As far as the 2026 is concerned, no. And if we did, first off, I wouldn't tell anybody whether or not we had or not, simply because, again, from a business perspective, a deal's a deal when a check's in the hand. And there is zero commitment from anybody. And I'm not saying what's in their heart or in their mind, but I'm talking about what's on paper. And them coming out and saying, yep, I'm 100% going to do this. And until that day, that's the day you'll probably hear immediately after I do, because I will say nothing to nobody regarding this until I get confirmation from people about them wanting to do it. The idea is to make sure that I protect them. to make sure that they're not being attacked for any silly ideas or silly things that, don't come to fruition for whatever reason. But also, too, to make sure that they are ready to rock and roll and they're ready to put in the time and also their dime to make sure that this works out for them.
So how many people have you spoken to about this? Not saying any names, but how many? Are we talking one, two, three?
More than one, less than 100,
Okay.
somewhere around there.
Um,
And the reason I say that, Ray, is I'm not trying to be cavalier about it. I'm not trying to be like snarky about it, but is I'll get people who reach out to me and they said, I'm going to run for governor. And then I say, okay, no problem. So if you want to say how many serious conversations have I had with some people, less than a dozen. There's been a lot more than that have said, when I run in 26 for governor, I'm like, okay, great. Let's talk about it. And they're like, really? You'd let me do it? I'm like, first off, it's not my job to stop anybody from doing anything. You want to run? You want to run? Go for it. Let's see what you got. And then there's nothing serious behind that.
are there any other offices on your guys' radar for 2026? I know the result for treasurer was kind of close, and then Lieutenant
Yeah.
Governor Matos hasn't really fundraised much, and then the whole congressional run with the fake signature scandal.
Yeah. So if I was to say no, then I wouldn't be doing my job. So every office, every opportunity that we have, you said it earlier, the idea that I made a push for the IG's office, which I'm still going to do it. The idea behind the IG's office is to create a balance of power. And what we need to do in Rhode Island is to create a balance of power. There's no such form of leadership or government that has ever done well, that has been a uniparty, a singular leadership, singular party type thing. There's got to be some sort of balance. Having, two parents, for instance, is always a good thing. And everybody knows when mom says no, dad will say yes. Dad will say no, mom will say yes. It's the same thing in politics. And I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form, don't take this one out of context, that the government's my parents, because, and God forbid, that will never happen. They're the crazy uncle and crazy aunt. That's who they are as far as the family dynamics is concerned. But I mean, there's got to be some sort of balance of power. So for us to go after every seat possible, providing we have the absolute right candidate, we're going to do it.
As soon as we hear any 2026 candidates, we'll have you back on to like analyze more of those for sure. And obviously,
Bring
you
it.
too. We'll get you on for that. I had to give a little bit of a hard time for 2026 because that's the next cycle. But
Of
I do
course
want
it
to
is.
I do want to end for non-political, just to take a step away from politics. As you remember the last time we talked about what you think Rhode Island's best known for and your time as a Rick student.
Mhm.
But I'm going to give an alternate. What are your hobbies?
uh, what are my hobbies? What I used to have as a hobby. Actually, no. I will say this. I mean, you're catching me right out of the election season after having my first term as chairman of the political party that is pretty much all volunteer. Actually, all volunteer. I put in a lot of time there, so I really haven't had time for much. The only thing that I would say if I was going to be hobbies, um, I don't even know if it qualifies as hobby, is basically cigars. Because to me is I'm not a heavy cigar smoker. However, to me, it kind of puts me in a mode where I'm going to say I'm going to go have a cigar, which means that I'm actually stopping and I'm going to slow down and I'm going to try to find that off switch to shut down my brain. As far as other hobbies are concerned, you caught me after going to the gym, but I don't want to qualify that as a hobby. My wife would love for me to turn that into a hobby. But I don't have any specific hobbies that I do every day, and I'm not going to blow smoke up your skirt and pretend that I do. But maybe just on occasion, being the opportunity to sit down, have a cigar, and shut off my brain and try to block everything out, which is an amazing opportunity. And I'd love to be able to find that skill set one more time.
That's all the questions I had, Joe. Thank you so much for giving me your time for this. I really appreciate it. Especially, I don't doubt that you've had probably at least like 5+ interviews this week alone, just based on the results.
That was yesterday.
That's just all day, just yep, 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 yep. Thank you again for giving me your time for this, and thank you for
Absolutely.
tuning into this episode of Ray-ality TV. If you want to see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel, please click the subscribe button down below and the post notification bell icon to the right of it. I'm Ray Bakari. I'll see you next time.